Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Kumar, the co-founder and co-director of Salastina. I'd like to raise my glass to all of you who are here joining Salastina for our 39th happy hour. Cheers. For those of you who are new to Salastina, we were pretty much a strictly live concert series. And once the pandemic hit, we adapted by holding these weekly Zoom meetings. Please feel free to type any questions you might have for our guest artists in the Zoom chat, and we'll try to get to all of them. We'll be playing some videos throughout the hour, and if you would like to enjoy those videos at a higher video and audio resolution, on each occasion, we will put a link in the chat to our YouTube live channel, along with instructions on how to do that. Or you can just stay here in Zoom the whole time and enjoy those videos at a slightly lower quality. And if we run into any problems with YouTube, you can always just come back to Zoom to watch those videos. The event formally ends at 7 p.m., at which time we will have a soft out. And from then on, things will be more informal than, well, they already are, for more casual chatting and possibly the chance for you to directly ask our guest artist some questions. And I will turn it over to my co-director, Maya Jasper White.
Hey everybody, I'm Maya, Kevin's co-director. Special welcome to all of you who are new, and a different special welcome to our returning fans. As Kevin mentioned, we are a classical music organization, always trying to blur the lines a little bit, but Lindsey really, nobody does that quite like her. So I am thrilled to introduce you to a total genre buster who is so much more than just a violinist. And I think what I personally find the most inspiring about Lindsey's story is that in spite of so many obstacles like critics, gatekeepers, genres that are really trying to, well, I guess by definition are very closed, and self-doubt and all kinds of things that normally keep people back, by following her passion and her curiosity, and with a lot of grit and determination and optimism, she's found massive success. And I think a lot of people are really inspired by that too. So welcome, Lindsey. And can you please introduce us to your really cool video, Artemis?
Yes, well, thank you for giving me that intro, Maya. And I should also mention that when I'm in LA and when I'm feeling like super motivated, inspired, Maya's my violin teacher. So she helps whip me into shape when I'm like, oh my gosh, help me. So, anyways, speaking of which, I really need some lessons soon. So I'm ready to be like whipped into shape again. But so anyways, I'm so grateful for Maya. And yes, this video that we're going to kind of kick it off with, is a fun one. It's called Artemis. It was from my most recent album, and it kind of was the intro video to introduce people to this character that was the main character of my comic book that went with the album as well. And she is Artemis, the goddess of the hunt and the goddess of the moon. I love the symbolism of that, how, she's strong yet soft. I thought she represented femininity so well. And just she kind of became this overarching character to represent that light can shine in darkness, which is kind of a theme I feel like I love to live by in my life. So no further ado, this is Artemis.
Yeah.
Woo, thank you.
Okay, so we had a pre-event meeting with Lindsay, and I was floored to learn how much Lindsay is involved with each of these videos. So I have a list of things that she does. So besides writing all the music and performing, of course, she comes up with the video concept. She does the video editing. She does the location scouting. She does costuming, and I'm sure I'm missing tons of stuff. But she does all this stuff, and what I came away with was that she's somebody who has learned how to integrate so many different things that she loves to do into one art form, and also that like you think of yourself mostly as a storyteller, and I mean, like most people will concentrate on one of those things, and then the other things will be hobbies or they'll kind of dabble in it. But I'm just so impressed with the way that you shaped your career. Can you tell us a little bit about your also you came up with the violin shapes and like all the we'll talk more about that later too, but just like all of that stuff too. Can you tell us a little bit about how you were like your various interests, like when they came up, and how you were able to kind of forge them all into one thing?
Yeah. Good question, by the way, and lots of good questions in the chat that I saw bubbling up, and I'm not fast enough typing, so hopefully we'll get to all of them later to actually answer. But so yeah, I feel like I always had such diverse interests. Like growing up, I loved like I was always making my own Halloween costumes, and I sewed my own prom dresses. Like I just loved to like design and sew things, and I've always been very crafty and hands-on. I also got super into editing when I was a teenager, which is interesting because back when I was a teenager, which is a while ago, editing software wasn't just on everybody's phone. Like it was actually quite difficult to find. And so I found a family friend whose business had editing software, and I would go and make little videos with my friends and then edit them at this place. So I just kind of had a lot of different interests. Of course, the violin I've played since I was 6. That was like a big one that was very defining of like me as a person. But when I went to college, I was actually about to major as a classical performance major at BYU. And I just realized it like kind of broke my heart, but I was like, I actually don't love this anymore. And I don't actually even think I like playing the violin anymore. And so then you're faced with this, like, well, do I just quit and like throw all those years of this being a part of my identity and all that work like off to the side? And I did decide not to major in music, but I made this conscious decision of like, but I need to like figure out why I lost the love, because I loved it once upon a time. Like, where did I lose it? And how can I find it again? So I started to just make it fun. I started to combine like editing. I started to make fun little videos of playing the violin. I started to play with different bands and like just jam and like write, because that was something I always enjoyed. And costuming, adding fun costumes to what I did. And, so little by little, I just started taking all my hobbies and pairing them with the violin, kind of in a search of like my passion. And by doing so, I stumbled upon, all my different, unique, very strange, unrelated talents and interests all actually can combine very nicely into this very, very small niche. And so it kind of was accidental. I feel like I stumbled upon it, but it also came as a result of just my parents really encouraging me at a very young age to like follow my interests, like without being afraid of like the jack of all trades, stigma, but really letting me pursue what I wanted and kind of letting me blow like the wind. And it blew me to this spot.
And so do you find yourself like each day sort of working on a little bit of each of those things, or what's a typical day for you like?
And, it so depends on kind of where I'm at. If I'm developing a show, I'm probably dabbling in like all the different things, from like figuring out what the costumes are to like practicing the violin, practicing the choreography, just all the different things. And then when I'm like, for example, right now, I'm kind of like in between projects trying to like search for my next thing. So I'm almost like in kind of building mode again. Hence why I was like, Maya, I need to start working on my violin skills now that I actually have like some time and a break. And, I'm like trying to figure out, like I'm writing a little bit, just trying to figure out what the next sound is. So I'm kind of in a building stage, but it totally depends, where I'm at.
I see.
So Lindsey, can you talk a little bit about the different kinds of barriers that you faced? You know, you mentioned the stigma against jack of all trades. So what kinds of obstacles did you come up against? How did you overcome them? And do you still come up against barriers and obstacles, and does it matter?
Yeah, you know, I feel like when I first started, it was so frustrating because, you know, the term gatekeeper is the best way to describe it. But I felt like everywhere I kind of tried to enter, it was just like, no, there's not room for you here. You're not quite in our genre, or you're not quite in our niche. And, you know, I think everybody runs into that. So I'm not alone in that struggle. But I remember when I first kind of developed this new sound, I didn't fit in the electronic world. They weren't really a fan of me. They said, no, she's not one of us. She's not like the DJs. And like, you know, she doesn't fit over here. But the classical community was very much like, no, 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 we don't want her over here. So it was really hard to find, you know, a place for myself. And I feel like, I'm so grateful because originally I wanted a record label so bad. In my mind, I'm like, that's how you make it. Like, you get a record deal and then everything supposedly happens for you. You know, that's kind of what I felt. That's what I had heard. And so I went super hard trying to find a record deal when I was just starting. And as I did so much as like driving out to Vegas and LA, like trying to like hand little DVDs and CDs over to like people person to person. And it just never went anywhere. And luckily for me, I, you know, jumped into YouTube at the perfect time for me. And, you know, it kind of exploded my career and allowed me to start to tour. And one thing led to the next. And so suddenly these very same record labels were like knocking on my door, like, Lindsey, we would love to sign you. And I'm just so, so grateful that you know, because, well, I'm grateful at the timing of it all, because if they had said yes when I wanted them to say yes, I would have signed anything. I would have signed a terrible contract in order to get my music heard. But thankfully, no one was interested when I didn't know enough. And by the time I'd learned all this stuff and gotten street smart, I was like, actually, I don't need you. I'm doing it all on my own and I figured it out. And so I'm not going to sign those contracts. I'm not, you know, and I'm very lucky that I'm still an independent artist and I get to own all my stuff and have creative control. And, you know, and it's not because I'm super smart. It's because the timing was just so fortunate and I was so lucky and blessed in the way it all happened. You know, and now I still face gatekeepers. We all constantly will. And I think sometimes the biggest one is in my own mind, just that self-doubt that we put in our own head.
Oh, I think that's about that more later.
Okay, we'll talk about that more later.
No, just self-doubt part. But you mentioned when we talked the other day about that there even now, like if you want to get a Grammy, it turns out that there's a whole bunch of hoops that you have to jump through. Or if you want your music to be on the radio, you know, because I didn't know that aspect of like the biz, and you'd think that someone like me would think that for someone with the following that you have, that wouldn't matter. So that was really interesting for me. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I like almost hate to say this stuff because I feel like it ruins the Cinderella story that everybody, you know, it's kind of nice to believe that when you watch the Grammys and stuff, but you know, being on the inside. And I remember when I first like made my first album and then my second album, it was so important to me. I wanted to do everything right so that I could get a Grammy, and we did all the right things that were Grammy worthy. And I remember one year I was, this is almost funny. I was so excited because I just looked at the sales of my album and how well it had done. And I just knew that the category I had put it into, I knew I was going to win. And then I remember when the Grammy list came out for like the nominees, I was shocked that I wasn't even nominated. Wow. And I was, you know, I was devastated because I'd even planned my touring around the fact that I'd probably need to be at the Grammys this year. Like, you know, wow. And I just remember feeling so like side blasted by this. But I've since learned that you just, even though, yes, if I won a Grammy today, I would be ecstatic, but you can't bank all your value on that. And it's something I no longer value in the same way as I used to, because you just learn that it's very, very political, is, you know, because I even got on the Grammy board at one point and saw how it's worked. And I was like, you know what, I just actually don't care anymore. You know, because you kind of learn that, you know, all these things that kind of give you value, and, you know, there's gatekeepers everywhere. Same with the radio. Like when you play the radio game, you just realize, wow, if you don't have a big major label that owns your music, they pull the puppet strings of all of that. And so it really does shift the value you put on certain things. And I think that's really good for artists to realize, because then you don't take all this self-blame of like, why am I not good enough, you know?
Right.
And that's been important.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned, you know, being an independent artist, and I want to just kind of talk a little bit about what it was like for you in the beginning, and then, you know, when did it, what was the turning point where, you know, you could start to say, well, I only have like, you know, 10 million views on this video, and that's not really what I was what I was shooting for.
Yeah, well, I remember when I did my first video, and I remember being so ecstatic as it got like, you know, it got 1,000 views, and I was like, oh my gosh, 1,000 people watched my video. And you know, I remember that feeling. And I remember when my first video hit 1 million views, and I just thought I was dreaming. You know, I just thought, what the heck has happened in my life, you know? You know, and I think you get so used to seeing these numbers and numbers and numbers, and not only your own numbers, but suddenly, like, you know, TikTok, people can get hundreds of millions on a video of, you know, them vacuuming their, you know, their rug, like, you know, so just numbers start to get escalated in strange ways that become very unrealistic, and remind you, or makes you actually forget that like each one of those is a person, and having 1,000 people see something is really cool. And I sometimes have to like remind myself that.
Yeah, but you used to play like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, go for it.
I mean, you told us how you would play like these sort of shows, like local shows.
Yeah, when I was first starting, I was really, you know, every record label was really not interested, and made it very clear that like, ooh, you're so outside the box. We're not even interested at all. Like, and so I remember I was like, well, how can I do this? So I was like, grassroots. I'm just going to play anywhere I can. And so I'd play at like open mic nights. I got on this like college showcase thing where I played. And so colleges started to hire me to play in like their cafeterias, like far from glamorous work, but it was helping me save money, because I was also going to school at the time, like paying my way through college, and it gave me enough money to put aside so that I could make my first album. And so I was, you know, I would fly from college to college, playing in these cafeterias, and sometimes even sleeping in my car, just doing the real grassroots thing. And I think I was just at that point of like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Right when things finally clicked for me. And I do feel like a lot of times that's when things click, is right when you're like at that point of like, you have to go just past, I can't do this anymore. And like a lot of times that's the moment. And that's not just my story. I've heard that from so many other artists or friends of mine who've been very successful at this. They had to just push past what they thought they could like endure.
Yeah. And so, I mean, going from those kinds of shows to, I mean, your live shows are probably like, you know, thousands of people there. How do you connect your audience like in that kind of a setting? Like when you're in a giant arena or a big concert hall, or, you know, wherever your shows happen. Yeah. How do you find that sort of personal connection with them?
You know, I recently did a real small show that just brought me back to like those days when I was just doing these really intimate, small, like my first tour. There's nothing like an artist's first tour. You're playing in the most dive places, you know, but I was playing my music, and like people were buying tickets to see my show. And I just was, there's nothing as magical as that first ever tour. As small and as dinky as it was, it doesn't matter. And I got taken back to that because I did a really small album release party show in a dive venue, just like the old days. And it felt so, you know, it is very different to connect with people in a room where you can only see the first few rows. But, you know, I do love doing a big show, because it allows me to like do the show that Lindsey always dreamed of doing. And that is like fun costumes and costume changes and, you know, choreography and dancers. Like I love that, you know, because as a consumer, that's the show that I want to go to. And so, you know, whenever I maybe can't see everybody, honestly, it's looking into the eyes of the people that I can see, you know, and connecting with them in these moments. And I'm very grateful to those moments that I do get to connect, because that's what reminds me. Oh, also meet and greets. I love, some artists get really stressed out or like overwhelmed by meet and greets, but I do them before every show, specifically because it reminds me that like, you know, people be like, we came all the way from such and such, or our daughter saved money all summer to buy this meet and greet. And it just reminds me that, yeah, I've done this show 45 times, but like, this is the first time this person's going to see this show. And
Right.
it makes me excited to step on the stage, and it makes me connect.
Yeah. Well, we're going to next watch a video of yours that has only 120 million views, I think. This is called Shatter Me. Would you mind just kind of setting this up for us?
Yeah. This will always be like one of my favorite videos, I think, because I wrote the song for a very symbolic reason. And I remember going into the studio with the producer and being like, we're writing about a ballerina today who is stuck in a music box. I was like, the music box and the ballerina that spins perfectly. And I explained to him this story about how at first she feels that this sphere is a protection for her. It's keeping her safe. But throughout the music video, she starts to learn that it's actually a prison. And even though it's keeping her safe, it's keeping her away from all her possibilities and everything. And what this was a metaphor was for me at the, not at the time, but years ago, I went through anorexia. And I felt like this disease that was plaguing my mind, it had almost tricked me into thinking it was protecting me. It was keeping me safe, but it was completely a cage. And it almost ruined my life if I hadn't gotten out of it. I was so unhappy and so depressed. And it literally felt like I had to like break not only the shell of the sphere, but I had to like almost break the shell of my own self to get out of it. And I was underneath. And so that's the story behind Shatter Me.
Thank you. And the instructions for YouTube are just a little bit up in the chat there, or you can stay here and Zoom and listen. Thanks. Thanks, Marissa.
A pirouette in the dark, I see the stars through me. Tired mechanical heart, beat till the song disappears. Somebody shine a light, I'm frozen by the fear in me. Somebody make me feel alive and shatter me. So cut me from the line, dizzy spinning endlessly.
Okay, so we were worried this might happen. We will, Marissa, can we just play the video directly in Zoom? Okay, so just give us a minute and we will play it directly here in Zoom. I think it has to do with the scale of Lindsey's fame that we were just talking about, and how many views she has on YouTube.
The algorithm went, wait a minute, I know this song. Copyright violation.
Here we go.
A pirouette in the dark, I see the stars through me. Tired mechanical heart, beat till the song disappears. Somebody shine a light, I'm frozen by the fear in me. Somebody make me feel alive and shatter me. So cut me from the line,
Yeah.
Thank you.
That ending is amazing. So, Lindsey, I'd love to circle back to our conversation about self-doubt, because that totally connects with, how you set up Shatter Me. And how long ago was it that you made that video? I'm curious, like, just how did you overcome this? Is it something you're constantly working on? Can you speak to where you're at with all of those kinds of thoughts and feelings?
Yeah. Let's see. I made this video, oh gosh, I want to say it was like 2014. I'll have to fact check myself on that. And that was the amazing Lizzie Hale, I should say, who was singing on that, because I'm such a fan of her and love her to death. But I was struggling with anorexia from like 2008 to, gosh, it was like 2012, I feel like, is when I started to like actually get it under control. Is once I was in 2012, I could handle it. And I had realized I had a problem, and I had done a ton of work, including I did therapy, like both individual and group therapy, and read books. And I basically turned working on myself and my relationship with food and my body, I turned that into like a part-time job while I was going to school. Because once I realized I had a problem, I was so low and I was so depressed. And I mean, honestly, I hated myself so much, and just everything about myself. I thought I was so hideously ugly. I had no motivation. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. Like, my life was being destroyed. And once I finally was able to like put my finger on, oh my gosh, I'm anorexic. Like, as hard as it was to like say the first time, when I like finally admitted it to myself, it was almost like this weight was lifted off my shoulders that I had been carrying for so long. And I thought, you know what? I learned how to play the violin once upon a time. I learned how to, I taught myself how to dance. And for goodness sake, I can learn how to conquer this problem in my own mind. And so I worked on it really, really hard. And to be honest, it's something I'll have to work at for the rest of my life. Like, I would love to say that it's no longer an issue and like I never think about it, but my relationship with my body and self-love and food, even as simple as that is going to always take a little bit of work. Is it something I think about that impacts my everyday? Absolutely not. And I love to think that I'm actually very happy and feel so lucky that I can say I live a really normal life, and I'm very happy, and I'm a different person than I was back then. But it's, it takes, I would say, maintenance to keep in this spot. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
Oh,
sorry, I've only done this kind of event like 39 times, so still learning. Anyways, in the classical music world, I think, so many of us are constantly chasing a carrot too. It feels like you're never going to be good enough. There's this kind of elusive, like, best technique, best musicianship. We're kind of always chasing this sort of exceptionalism, and that gets so tiresome. And I'm curious, like, especially because, you with your violin playing, you've combined it with so many other things to create something that really inspires people. Can you speak to your relationship with self-doubt and how it's evolved over the years, like specifically to your violin playing or to your creative endeavors?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of an ebb and flow with me, because I feel like sometimes I like really like, I have to really like buoy myself up, and then I can be very confident. But if I don't pay attention to that, kind of the same with like my anorexia, if I let it slip by the wayside, all of a sudden I will realize, I am overcome by self-doubt right now. I don't believe I can do this. Like, I really don't. I don't believe that I'm good enough. Oh my gosh, I don't believe. And like, that term of being good enough is something that, like, I don't care who you are. I think everybody sometimes wonders that very question, like, am I enough? Am I enough for my kids? Am I enough, in my talent or in my work ethic, like whatever it is, am I enough? And, so I find that I have to like kind of constantly maintain like self-belief. And, I've done some things, I don't know, every new year I pick a word. Like instead of making a million little New Year's resolutions, I pick one word that's like my focus. And then I can have a million underneath that word, but I have like my focus word. You know, one year it was gratitude. That kind of changed my life, by the way, another point for another day, but like focusing on gratitude for a whole year. Last year, my word was magic. And it was because I had become so overwhelmed with self-doubt that I'd lost my magic. When I began my career, I believed I could do anything. And I really think I believed my career into existence, because no matter what anyone told me, I was just like, moving on to the next, because I know I can do this and I know it's going to work. And I just knew it was going to work, and it happened because I believed it. And some of those things that I manifest back in the day, like still are coming to me in the weirdest ways, where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I manifested that when I was first starting and here it showed up. And so I was like, I need to work on just my magic again, the magic of believing that you can do it, believing that you're enough, believing that like what is meant to be will be, and I'm just going to flow through it. And so that's like, I feel like a constant work in progress. And that's what that was my word for last year.
Nice. So I think something that I'm hearing now, and when we spoke last week, was it? Yeah, is that you're constantly striving to challenge yourself to do new things and take on new ideas. And that seems to be really central to just your practice as an artist and in your life. A lot of the time when people behave that way, it's because they're trying to prove something to themselves. And I really get the sense from you that it's less about that and more about faith. So with that in mind, can you set up Crystallize, the most recent version?
Yes. Okay. So I do like to challenge myself a lot. And I think it just, I think it's a combination of two things. For example, we're about to watch a performance I did to my song Crystallize, where I wanted to do something I'd never done before. And I think that it all started because here I felt like I had had a lot of my performing like avenues ripped away from me in 2020. You know, we couldn't perform, all of us musicians that go out there, and that's what we do, that like, you know, it got stolen from all of us. And so here I was trying to think, how can I do a spectacular kind of show in a virtual way? And so I was trying to think of things that would just be spectacular and that would be beautiful and stunning. And so I was like, well, what have I never done before? And anyways, I went to a Cirque show years ago and I saw the art of hair hanging, which is what it sounds like. I learned how to tie my hair up in a very specific top knot with where you braid a ring into it, and then you suspend yourself. You lift, like someone lifts you up and you fly around by your hair. And there is a behind the scenes video that kind of explains my process. I don't think we're watching that here, but it was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was physically excruciating. Like I can't even explain it. It was excruciatingly painful and terrifying every time, because the sensation would go through my head. Every time when I would clip in and put the weight on it, I'd just start to cry viscerally. I couldn't help it. And I would just think to myself, this is impossible. But because I had done it the first time, every time I'd talk myself through, I know I can. I know I can do this because I've done it before, and my head isn't going to rip off. So we're going to do it. And so, like I said, it started because I wanted to create something artistic and spectacular and stunning, because I didn't know how else to perform, and I was trying. But it became more of a thing where it kind of became about, I can do this. And I felt like in 2020, and I do believe that sometimes you do have to like reevaluate and say, this isn't for me, I'm going to quit. And that's okay, because I tried. And there's no shame in that. And I almost did quit several times. But my gut kept saying, like, you need this and you can do this and I can do hard things. And I think I really needed it. My word was magic. And I kept telling myself, like, if I believe enough in myself, I can do this. And so I trained for 2.5 months, hair hanging 3 times a week or 4 times a week. And going through PTSD every time I'd clip in. But it really did teach me that sometimes that thought of this is impossible is not the end of the road. It's the first step. I remember when I picked up a violin, you know, Maya, it felt impossible the first time we picked up our violins, and you're like, oh, how do you do this? And so anyways, that was kind of my experience. And it also taught me this valuable lesson again, that sometimes even through hard things, even through pain, even through trials, we can experience beauty. And once I was up there soaring around and once my head became numb, it felt amazing and empowering and beautiful. Granted, I'll never do it again. I trained, did it, never again. But anyways, this is Crystallize. This is my performance.
Amazing.
It makes me tense watching it. I like it so my shoulders are like tight. Maya, you asked in the chat, I think, if I choreographed that one, and I did. I watched a bunch of hair hanging videos and just like made until I figured out what I could possibly do.
That's amazing.
Oh my God. I mean, I have to say, like, I had to confess to Kevin, I think it was just yesterday, I said, Kevin, I haven't watched Crystallize all the way through yet because I can't do it. I don't know if it's because I know you or what, but it's just like, oh my God. It's profound and moving. And I love that you kept the, just the focus on, you didn't shy away from how hard it was, you know, in the video, like you hear yourself breathing and the expressions on your face. It's really striking.
Yeah. And also there's a making of video of this that you guys should definitely watch too. Yeah. I'm just going to take a quick second for Salastina. These events are free to the public, but they are not free to produce. And Salastina also is involved with other projects like playing for ICU patients during this COVID time through Zoom as well. And we have other things going on too. So we know that this is not an easy time for everyone, but if you have the means and you would like to support us, you can do that through our website, or we will also post some ways that you can donate here in the chat. And one of our, our most generous patron has offered to match any donations that are made tonight. So please consider donating to Salastina. And just also want to mention that we would love to see all of you and your friends too at future happy hours. Our next happy hour next Tuesday is with our friend and film composer Joe Trapanese, and he was a composer for movies like Tron and Lady and the Tramp and
The Greatest Showman.
The Greatest Showman, yeah, a bunch of stuff. So you'll get some kind of an inside view at film scoring as well.
And he's also one of the nicest guys in that business. So
absolutely, yeah. So Lindsey, you kind of touched on this earlier, but a big part of your life was touring, right? And so, you know, what does the future hold for you? Like, what are you thinking nowadays about your next projects?
Who knows? I don't even know. I've actually been thinking a lot about what is my next project, you know, and I guess I'm excited to use this time to try other things and not hair hanging again, but I think that, you know, something I've always wanted to get more involved in is like producing. And so it's like, you know what, it's something I've always, I think, just been too intimidated by. So whenever I like start, I do something else. I'm like, oh, it's, you know, and there's always something to distract me. But I really do think that I'm like, I just got my keyboard out and I'm like, I'm going to start to try to produce some stuff. And so I think that's next on the horizon for me, as well as like, writing and possibly producing some like outside projects that I'm excited about. But, you know, it has, I think, posed that challenge of all of us getting creative, like the Zooms that you guys are doing to find a way to connect with people. And I did a Christmas show, you know, a concert, that's what the hair hanging was a part of. It was part of this like whole big live show that was an hour long. And I, you know, I produced and directed it and found so much comfort in being able to feel like I was performing through that show. And so, you know, if this continues, I'm sure I'll do another one of those, but it's just kind of that we all got to figure it out.
Yeah. And you also mentioned, like last week, you mentioned expanding like how you storytell. Like I think you mentioned plays as well.
Yeah, I've got a play I've very, very slowly been working on.
Okay.
You know, so again, it's kind of like all these projects or like skills that have just been in this drawer over here that I'm like, I'll get to those, or I kind of touch on them every once in a while. I'm like opening that drawer and pulling out those projects. And it is kind of refreshing to get out of, I guess, the hamster wheel that we all just kind of run in. That's very comfortable. And I know what to do. I understand this hamster wheel and I know it's going to keep spinning if I just, you know, sometimes I guess it's maybe good for us all to kind of get kicked off our hamster wheel and try something new. So that's where I find myself.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay. Well, I have to say, thanks for answering our like rapid fire questions, and not only doing it, just answering them, but doing it so eloquently and like with so much, just conveying so much heart and information and just, all of yourself. So you've just been incredibly generous with yourself. I just want to just say thank you for being that way.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining and all your questions. I'll try to get to as many of them as
Yeah. So maybe we can start with that. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, Maya and I had a question first.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, we were wondering, so you mentioned your Christmas special. I just today learned about this VR concert that you did in August.
Oh yeah.
Wow. I mean, that seems like there's been, so in our world, in the classical music world, I've gotten these emails that say things like, virtual reality concert. And you go, oh, interesting. And then you open the email and it's like, we've made it look like the players are in a concert hall. And it's just like, wah, wah. Like that is like such a pitiful, unimaginative use of the tech, and so I was really interested to read a little bit about what you had done with that format. So can you talk about what that was like and what you thought of it if you want to do it again?
Yeah, what was cool and interesting about it was we did it prior to the pandemic. It was almost just like before I go on tour, let's do a cool virtual concert where the whole world at once can I can premiere these songs, in a cool imaginative way, just something different, and so it was so cool because anytime I use if you can't be on stage in front of people, there's nothing like live energy. And so if you can't have that live energy, how can you make the medium you're using serve in a way that heightens the experience so that it feels special in its own way?
Sure.
And that was what was so cool about the VR experience, because it's like, well, what toys do we have to play with? Oh my gosh, the environment can interact with me. Okay, so we were like, well, let's have it like when I do certain things, like lightning will strike around me, or like when I spin, like in this one scene, like rose petals will fly around me and interact with my, so it was just really fun to get to play with things that you could never do in the real world that could only be done in VR. And that made it really cool. And also I could, I decided to design my avatar, not like myself. It wasn't a Lindsey avatar. It was the character Artemis from my comic book, so it was really fun to get to play with like everything from costuming to environment to props that could fly around. So that was super fun. And then, we've now been able to use that technology now that we can't tour. It's been like, oh my gosh, how grateful I am that I have this VR world created that I've now gotten to use a couple times to do specific and special events with and stuff. So it's kind of amazing what people can do nowadays.
Totally.
So we're just going to kind of go down the list here. Vlad from Ukraine asks, how do you find ideas for your music videos?
Sometimes it's so random. Sometimes they will come to me while I'm writing the song, and I'll all of a sudden be like, and I get really excited when that happens. I'll turn to the producer. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is about pirates. I was like, this is about pirates for sure. Or one time I was in the studio and I'm like, this is a Western showdown. I was like, this is like a guitar slinging outlaw playing his guitar, and he came into my town, and I'm going to protect my town with my violin, and it's a showdown. And so then we'll continue writing the song now with this story and video in mind. Sometimes I'll have the idea first, like Shatter Me, when I went to the producer and I already had the full idea of that had just kind of come to me through probably reading or watching a movie, or popped into my head. Actually, that one came, I was looking at a music box in a store and I suddenly related so much to the ballerina inside the box. And that's how that one came about. And so I just kind of kept that inside until I was ready to write about it. And that came from back when I was super anorexic and I related to this ballerina in this little toy. So the stories come from all different places. And then if I haven't thought of the idea yet, by the time I'm like, I want to make a video for this song, I'll seriously just listen to it on loop and on loop and on loop and on loop, until I'm, I listen to my music more than anybody. Until I come up with what does this make me feel? What colors do I see? And so forth.
I see. Can you just say a few words about like the origins of the fantasy elements
Yeah.
in your in your videos or your storytelling?
Yeah. The origins of the fantasy elements. I think I've just always loved like fantastical stories. When I was really, really little, my dad read me all of Lord of the Rings. And, and then once after we finished that, shortly after we started Harry Potter. And so I just kind of grew up with like a very fantasy driven imagination. And, my dad even used to write his own fantasy stories and read them to me, as his own scripts for movies that he loved to like write. And so it's just always kind of been a part of my brain. And I think those are my favorite ones to make as a like creator of music videos, is to like create these fantastical worlds and characters. And, and that's why my comic book leans so far into like the fantastical world. And that was really fun to have with my album. It just made the whole project kind of come to life in a new way that I hadn't done an album before.
Awesome. Okay, wait. So I just want to. It's 7 o'clock. So this is the end. We're just marking the end of the formal part of the event. Cheers, everyone. Thanks again for the happy hour. And so now we will. I think we're going to try to unmute the people who have questions. And so we'll just kind of say your name, and Marissa's super fast with this, and she will invite you to unmute yourself. Bilal, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself, and you can ask your question. Marissa will unmute you, and you can ask your question.
Oh, fun.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Bilal. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How you been?
I'm good.
I've been a fan of yours for such a long time. I didn't think this was going to be possible, but this is very cool that I get to talk to you. My question to you is, you talk about like you're producing your videos, which are super awesome and super creative. Have you thought about filmmaking or short movies and stuff like that?
I have. And, I've always been kind of searching for the perfect story, to someday take and possibly like direct or produce. And, and I worked so hard on this comic book, partially because I liked writing the comic book and the story, but also because I thought, maybe this could someday be something that I produce in a larger form, content. So there's that. There's also this play that I'm writing that could also be a musical. So I don't know. I have definitely thought about it, and I would hope to do it in the future for sure.
That's awesome. Thank you. Been such a big fan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bilal.
So Kara,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, Kara Newman, if you're still here, which it appears you are, Marissa will unmute you now. You can ask your question.
Oh, hello. Hi.
Hi.
This is incredible. Thank you for selecting me. I didn't mean to ask so many questions. I have quite a few. First of all, that white violin in the Crystallize video, is that a violin that you had made, and the bow one as well? Do you have your violins made for you? Do you work with, just speak to that, please.
Yes. Sometimes I have them like custom tweaked, so like mostly I use a lot of Yamaha electrics. I like the way they sound. I like the look. And then I will take them and either do something to them myself or have someone else. Like, for example, that bow one, that one is named David because it's David Bowie. But I took that actually to like a movie prop house because it had to be done very specifically. I wanted it to be light enough that I could really I took it on tour. I needed to be able to like play it. I also needed it to be safe so it wouldn't poke someone's eye out. So yeah, I took that to like a movie prop house and they made that. And then the one in the Crystallize video, that's actually a Viper violin.
Yes,
they're made like that and they're so cool. It was the first time I'd ever played one. For real. I did one in a music video once, but anyways, so that was really cool.
So cool to see. And if you don't mind, I might ask one more quick question. What is your, I play a lot of fiddle music, a lot of Irish, Scottish, Scandinavian fiddle music.
It.
And what is your, I saw somebody ask in the chat if you started out on classical, and I'm curious what your fiddle background, if you have any.
So I did start out on classical. I did the Suzuki method for a long time. And then at a very young age though, I found fiddle music and I really liked it. And so I kind of saw it as like dinner dessert. My mom would always be like, you got to practice your classical music first. And then my dessert, you know, my reward for practicing my classical music was, okay, then you can use the last, like, you know, part of your practice to play fiddle music. So, and I will say I never really mastered, like there's such a different art in fiddle playing, and I never quite mastered that style, but I love that style so much. Like Celtic music is, one of my favorites. So it's very cool.
Thank you so kindly for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Salastina.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Lindsey, what's your relationship to classical music now?
I'm like I feel like I've just become a fan.
Yeah.
Maya helped me work on a couple songs. You know, I feel like I never quite mastered those either. I'd always get like pulled away from them, but I love classical music. I hear it and it just makes my heart, you know, so warm inside. I love it. And it is kind of my roots. I don't play it much anymore, sadly. And I almost like have so much respect for classical music that I don't call myself a classical musician anymore. But I do want to like brush up my classical chops.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is from, our resident flutist, Ben Smolin.
Hi there. I was just curious how you've talked about the different instruments that you have and play on. I was curious how you go about selecting a particular instrument for a particular setting or scenario or video. And I noticed like in the first video you switched between a couple, and I was just curious how you choose between like electric and acoustic and things like that.
Yeah. Well, when I record, I actually almost always use the exact same violin. I have like my favorite violin. Her name is Excalibur, and you know, it's my nice wood violin. So that's my favorite to record with, and I think almost all my songs were recorded with that violin. However, for live performance, it's always that question of like fashion and function. You know, I'm choosing the violin that one sounds the best with the song. Like, do I go wood or do I go electric? But also, you know, it's got to be part of like the show. So sometimes it's about matching my costume. It's like, oh, for that song, we got to have the white sparkly one. And for that one, I have to use the acoustic because I need a wood sound. So it kind of goes between, like I said, fashion and function. And I look at them sometimes like they're almost extensions of my costume. And then, you know, so anyways, it's kind of that going between those two.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Jose has a few questions. Jose Acosta.
Hi, Lindsey. Sorry, I'm so nervous. I'm from Argentina, and I hope you come back soon. And I have 2 questions. And the first is, what is your music video that was hardest to make? The 2, I don't know. The next music video will be about the story of Artemis. Thank you, Lindsey, and I love you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. And hello to like Argentina. I was supposed to go there right before the pandemic hit. Like I was like a week away from my show there, and I was so sad. So I hope to come back soon. And let's see, your first question, the hardest one to film. I'm going to put the hair hanging in its own category. That was definitely the hardest, but we won't, we already saw that. So other than that, probably the most physically challenging one was probably, might have been Between Twilight. I did it recently. I did it about a year ago. And it was, I think, the most difficult because it was freezing cold outside and I was trying to dance ballroom with Derek Huff.
Yes.
Derek freaking Huff. He's amazing. And he's like the best ballroom dancer in the world. And we were dancing ballroom on uneven ground in the forest because I was like, that'll be so pretty and it'll fit the Artemis story, doing a waltz in the forest dressed like a fairy or whatever. I was like so embarrassed because I was freezing and falling and tripping on myself in the dirt. And anyways, but it turned out really pretty. Also, it was a challenge because I had done Dancing with the Stars 2 years prior, but you know how sometimes in your mind you think you still got it? And so I didn't realize how quickly, I just didn't think about how quickly all that ballroom must have gone away. And so I had to quickly try to like get back in like my ballroom shape. Anyways, so that was kind of funny, but.
Okay. And the second, and sorry, and the next music
Oh,
video will be
yes.
about the story of Artemis. And
I
thank you.
think it will be. I think it'll like not be all about it, but I really would like to do the song I did with Amy Lee, which is Love Goes On and On. I'd really like to do a music video for that
Oh.
one next.
Yes.
I'm actually releasing a music video on Friday. It's not the Artemis story, but I'm
Yeah.
very excited about that one. That one's about loss and about just, you know, the people I've lost in my life. It's very special to me. But the next one I make, I think, will be about the Artemis story.
Yes. Okay. And Dark Side, sorry, but and I hope Dark Side in a future. No, I don't know.
Oh, thank you. That's
okay.
thank you for your suggestion. I appreciate that.
Lindsay,
Okay,
do
well,
you
thank you,
oh, sorry.
No,
Thank you, Jose. So Lindsay, do you like the locations for your videos are just like stunning. Where do you shoot them?
You know, sometimes I've shot a lot in Griffith Park, you know, in recent years.
Okay.
You'd be amazed the locations that you can find in Griffith Park. Like when I want to do outdoor ones, sometimes I'll go to Utah. Like I did a couple recently in the last few months where I just went to Utah because Utah is stunningly beautiful. And like, you know, so I filmed there a lot in like the canyons. And then the one we started with, that was actually, I'd always wanted to film in the Redwood Forest. And so Artemis was filmed up in the Redwoods, which was pretty cool.
Oh, nice. Okay. Sorry, that's my kid screaming in the background.
There's a great question from Sophie Kuba, one of our young composers, and you're in Guatemala now. Yeah, Sophie, Marissa will unmute you so you can ask your question.
Oh, she can't speak right now. She's
You know, I don't see Marissa on, so give me 1 second. I'll do this.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I'll ask Sophie's question for her. She asks, how do you balance what you want to do with what people seem to value? If it's not something that excites you, how do you get in the mindset?
Ooh, that is such a good question. You know, I think I just try to balance. Sometimes you got to do stuff you don't want to do, you know, whether it's like, oh, this part of the process I don't like, but you got to get through that part of the process to get to the end, or whether it's just a certain project that, you know, I feel like I should do. Because sometimes you just got to, you know, it's like, I know this will do well, or this is a favor for someone, or this is how I'm going to actually pay my bills with this project, you know, whatever reason it is. There's always reasons that are, I think, very valid to do the things that maybe you don't exactly want to do, and maybe they don't speak to your heart as much, but you know, we can't, you know, we don't have to be starving artists in order to do what we love. And sometimes the projects I love the most aren't the most successful. And I've definitely learned that. And so I have to sometimes do the ones that are just smart. And as long as I'm still enjoying what I do, and you know, I have a friend who, she says she does 80-20 rule. She'll do 80% what she knows she needs to do, and 20% she loves, and no one can touch what she loves. I probably have like a slightly different balance in my own life, but I do think it's just, oh my goodness, look at
Hey, Naomi.
she is so cute.
This is for 10 seconds. This is my daughter who had a craniotomy just before New Year's, and everyone in Salastina, our family, was so kind in their support. So I just wanted Naomi to say hi, and my husband just brought her up. That's all. Bye.
Oh my goodness. Hi, Naomi. Oh, everybody in the chat's going crazy. Oh, so cute.
Okay, let's see. Shreyad, would you, Marissa, can we unmute Shreyad?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you, Lindsay. My name is actually Shreyas. I was typing on my phone and, well, the S became a D, but that's another story. So, Lindsay, whenever I listen to all of your like songs, it's like there's this characteristic tune that's in it. Like even if I haven't heard it, I can tell that, okay, yes, this belongs to Lindsey Stirling. So how did you come up with that signature tune that's like embedded inside every other song of yours?
You know what? I don't quite know, because you know, as a violinist, you don't have like the voice that's like recognizable, like, you know, you can tell someone's voice when they talk. So I remember when I first started, I wondered if my music would have like as much of a voice as other artists did. You know, that's something that actually I was kind of worried about. I was like, will people ever be able to recognize that this is like a Lindsey song or not? You know, so anyways, the fact that you say that, thank you so much. And I honestly think it's just, I kind of found a sound that I liked. And I think it's I've stayed pretty true to that sound. I really do think next time I write, I'm going to kind of shift the sound. Then the question will be, will people recognize me once I've like shifted my sound a little bit in terms of production? But yeah, I think a lot of us artists kind of find melodies that like sing to us, and, you know, riffs, especially as a violinist, like my hands just got super comfortable doing certain riffs, and I have to try my best not to use them too often. That's almost what I'm trying to do, is the reverse of like, oh gosh, I don't want to use those patterns too much because they just come so naturally to me at this point. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, is like your sound is, I mean, you have a certain kind of sound, like a production sound, like a production-driven sound, I think, which is recognizable and cool.
Yes, we've had a couple people, so I'm sorry to not give you guys each the opportunity to ask Lindsey directly, but so many people asked the same two questions. One was, what's your word of the year for 2020?
Oh, I did see a lot of people asking that, and I was like, remember to answer. Thank you. It's connection. I really want to choose what I'm connecting to, because I feel like so often I'm like connected to the wrong things, like my phone, or caring about the wrong things. And I really want to focus this year on, first and foremost, my spirituality connection to God, and then, you know, kind of as a result of that, my connection to like people, and putting that first above everything else. Yeah, so that's my word for the year, is just connection.
That's awesome. I think that definitely most of us can relate to that the year we've all been through. And then the second question that came up a lot was, how do you de-stress? One person even said, you know, I listen to your music to bring down my blood pressure. So what do you listen to?
Oh man, de-stressing. Honestly, I call my mom or I call my sister. That's my de-stress, is like, because I will say I've like dealt with anxiety kind of a little bit through my life. 2020, it exploded. I had the most anxiety-driven year I've ever had, and some days were just like, I cannot win today. And I could always de-escalate though if I could talk to my sister or my mom. And so that's my big, like, at least it helps me like get over the hump and be like, okay, you know, what can I focus on? What can I, you know, I need to refocus. That's my big thing.
Sorry, go ahead, Maya.
Oh, there were also a bunch of questions about your various violins, and you sort of got into that a little bit already, but there was one really specific one about Artemis, how many violins you use. Like, so how many in your videos, what's the max number of violins that you'll use or feature?
I think the most I've ever done in one video is 3. Yeah, actually, no. There's one video that I did 5. And what I did was, it was really fun. I actually used the same violin, and I made little costumes for them. And so like, I actually went to Michael's and I bought some like cardstock paper, and I made like these little like sleeves that I could slide onto the violin, so that I could very quickly in the music video, after I like changed costumes, I would slip on the new little sleeve covering for the violin, and it suddenly was like black and white striped, and then the next one was blue polka dots, and like, so this video is very colorful, and it looked like I had 5 violins, but they were all just paper sleeves.
Let's see. I think we're gonna just, you know, do, if you're cool with it, Lindsey, like 2 more questions. Is that all right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just gonna kind of look through our list of questions and find the ones that are kind of most generally interesting. Let's see.
There's a couple about
Amanda, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, my name is actually Danica. My mom is Amanda.
Hi, Danica.
Hi.
Hi. But what are some tips for like beginner violinists? I just started at the end of last year.
That is exciting. Well, first of all, congrats on picking up the violin.
Yay,
The first
woo!
few months are definitely, I think, the hardest. So once you've gotten past those first few months, it's just going to exponentially get better and better. So just remember that when you start to feel frustrated. But my best tips for a beginning violinist is honestly probably kind of like the concept I introduced earlier of like dinner and dessert. The same way you got to like eat your vegetables and your meat and potatoes, and then you can have the cookie. I think it's really important to have both, whether we're talking about food or whether we're talking about the violin. Like sometimes you have to do the stuff that's not that fun, the scales, the arpeggios, and those little exercises that sometimes even hurt your hand. But you also have to reward yourself. You have to have fun stuff in there that you enjoy playing. And whether that's that, you know, afterwards you get to play along with a Taylor Swift song or whatever artist you like, or, you know, for me, it was fiddle music. So make sure that you're having fun with it while you're also doing the hard stuff. That's my best advice.
We do kind of have fun in my violin class. We do something called orchestra karate, and I've already made it to my orange belt.
Stop
awesome.
it. That's amazing.
Congratulations.
I also
Danica.
have another question. What was the hardest technique for you to learn in violin?
You know, it's probably what I'm trying to learn right now. I feel like I kind of, my hand position, you know, I think positioning on the violin, your, you know, the way you hold it, the way your hand is in the right spot. I think that's the most important thing as a violinist, is just getting all of those positions really correct. And over the years, I'm like a car that's kind of gotten out of tune, you know, so my hand positioning is not, you know, out of messy practicing and messy playing, you know, as I dance and play, it's had an effect on me. So now I'm trying to correct my hand positioning, and Maya was actually helping me with that. And I was working on it today, actually, before the call, because it's always really hard to correct things. So I just want to give you the advice to learn it right the first time, so you don't have to correct like me. Listen to your mom. She's like, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to combine a bunch of questions into one for the last question, and it's about dancing. So we had a bunch of questions about, like, when did you start dancing? How do you play while dancing?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that those were the two big ones. Like, or just if you can talk about dancing and how you kind of combined it with playing, and like, is that like a completely different discipline? I mean, we don't generally practice moving around and playing with the violin. So yeah.
Yeah. So the whole dancing thing was not like, oh, I always did that from the time I was a child. My mother couldn't keep me still. Like, no, that was actually not the case. I like was so stiff while I played my violin, you know, that my teachers were always like, you know, you can sway a little bit with the music. You can emote a little bit, Lindsay, because I was always so like, but I always loved dance. From the time I was really, really little, I was just fascinated by dance. My parents said I had to choose either violin or dance, and I chose violin. But I always loved it. And so when I was 23 is when I kind of made this conscious choice of like, I'm gonna learn to move while I play. And it started as just that. I wanted to like really like overly emote. And then it became like, oh, I want to like kind of be able to move around and jump, like. And then I started to like, so at the age of 23, I started to teach myself to dance because I wanted to learn to like spin and pirouette and like do all that stuff while playing the violin. And it's gone from very, very regimented, simplistic, like just movements that were all choreographed. I wanted them to always look like they were free flowing, but they were always very choreographed because it was so unnatural to me. And I would spend weeks learning the most simple choreography of like, just step this way, look that way, wink, like things like that. It was so simple. I would spend weeks learning these routines. You know, and of course, like anything, just through the years and years and years, it's gotten, you know, way, way bigger than I ever, I think, expected it would be when I first started kind of trying to move while play. You know, it's turned into backbends and full-on choreography with dancers, and I love it. I love it so much. And, you know, and I'm always trying to perfect it. Like recently I made these straps that, because I think the hardest part is, you know, keeping the violin in the right spot as you jump and
play, I was gonna ask
about
that. Yeah.
You know, so that's, I think, the hardest part about it is focusing on balance of my body and then balance of this. But I recently invented these little straps that could hold an actual, like not even electric, like a real violin to my body. And so I think that will in the future help even more. So I'm always trying to figure out like better ways to perfect this interesting craft that I'm still trying to just figure out.
So we can add inventor to your list of accomplishments.
I'll put them on the market as soon as I perfect it. So you can all jump around and play if you want to.
This has been amazing. Thank you for being so generous with yourself and your time, and yeah, just for being on the happy hour. This has been a blast. Thank you.
And I have to say, Lindsey, like, I want to give you credit. And in the 39 events of these that we've had, only 2 people have waived their fee, and one of them is you. So thank you so much for doing that. And if you enjoyed tonight's event, and like Kevin mentioned, the donor that we have has offered to match any donations that we get today. So, but props to Lindsey for waiving this fee. Usually they are not so affordable for us to have happen. And of course there are behind the scenes expenses and lots of other programs that we do, but I wanted to make sure that you got recognized for your generosity in that sense too.
Well, thank you so much. And I just really appreciate you guys. I love what you're doing, and you know how you're reaching out to so many people across the world through this. And thanks for having me. It was a really fun conversation, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for joining, and hope to see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.